Hey y'all, welcome to Fears for...
Oh man.
I need to practice like my heavy metal vocals anyway for my project, so hold on.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey queers! Welcome to Fears for Queers podcast!
You sound
Sit down and buckle up, you're gonna have the ride of your life. The ride of your life.
And then we just can I put a picture of us just like in a truck and just like driving while the like music
Yeah.
is playing? That would be great. Yes, welcome back. I am joined by Gay Trucker, lesser known alter ego of Allison.
Yeah, that's right. First and last name on my birth certificate, I swear to God.
Driver's license says Gay Trucker.
Yeah, that's me. Okay, fellas, buckle up, because I'm about to tell you some spine-tingling tales of my
Spookiness.
childhood. My spooky childhood.
Heck yeah, let's get into it.
All right, fellers. So I know this is hard to handle. It's very sexy.
Hard to handle bar.
But eyes up here, okay?
Eyes off the handlebar mustache, or you're going in the bed of the truck.
That was inappropriate. I'm sorry. No spanking. Okay, so I'm gonna tell y'all some personal ghost stories from my childhood. Tale number 1 takes place at the Veal Station Cemetery outside of Springtown, Texas.
You mean like little
Where?
cows?
Little baby cows!
No!
You
just munch
little
them.
baby cows!
You just pick them up and munch them.
Yeah, they're not even baby cows, they're like this big.
They're little baby. Baby this big.
That's good. So about this cemetery, legend has it there's a glowing tombstone. And by the way, I'll say I didn't see the glowing tombstone, but I experienced something else while I was there.
What'd you experience?
My cool mom, God, I hate her.
Super cool.
Starts ranting about my mom for 3 hours.
We could do another podcast for that.
When? I hate my mommy.
Little cows.
So anyways, Debbie Farmer drove me to
Deborah.
to the church. Deborah. That's not even her name. It's just Debbie.
Oh, really? On her birth certificate is Debbie?
Debbie K. Talks like that, but Debbie K drove me and 2 other queers out to, when we were 16, out to the Veal Station Cemetery, and we sat on the back row because legend has it there was a man back in the 70s who suffered from a heart attack and scratched the person next to him as he
splat.
Splat. We were joined there by a paranormal investigation team, and we were like,
Oh,
"Hey,
wow.
what's up?" And they were like, "Hey, what's up?"
Saw, dude.
And then
Just playing
Saw,
Phasmophobia over here.
we sat in the back row, and we were like, "This is gay. Oh my god. There's nothing here." Sorry, I'm gay, by the way. I can make that joke.
I
It's
gay,
my joke.
you gay, we gay.
We all
they
gay. We sat in the back row and waited for anything to happen,
Mhm.
but nothing happened. So we got up and we went back to my mom's car. And as we were going, Anthony said, "Allison, what's that on your back?"
What?
And I was bleeding. There was a scratch
What
mark.
the? No! Where?
He got me on my back, like
Like in the same
middle
spot?
of my back.
Oh.
I was wearing a tank top because I just got done with band camp.
Oh Lord.
So it's pretty riveting story.
That is.
Another, yeah.
I mean, it's a really common thing in ghost attacks to have like scratch marks, and in relation to like demonology or spiritual like practices like that, usually means like an evil spirit or like something that ain't done. You know what I mean? They got some stuff to do still. God, that's so you didn't feel anything. It was just you got up and you just blood.
I saw this post today on Twitter that made me almost like curl up into fetal position and go future, like Squidward did that one time.
Oh yeah,
because there's this like TikTok trend going around, and it's all these young teenagers, and they're like, if you lived through this era, I'm so jealous of you. And it's like scene hair and like checkered van and like
I have my checkered vans right
MCR.
Now. Oh no.
I mean, I was there for that.
Yeah,
you saw me too. We were both like,
oh yeah,
we were there in that together.
We were in that together. I should post some pictures.
I just can't believe people are like envious of that time. I kind of miss it.
The band.
It's fine.
I miss the.
I'm too. Yeah.
You are.
I'm too old for that shit now.
No, you're not. I'm poking you.
Yes, I am.
I'm gonna touch you.
Ah.
No, seeing stuff like that makes me feel really old too. Whenever I saw this Twitter post where it was like I was getting carded and this guy was like, "Oh, I saw the one, so you're good." And he's like, "The one?" He's like, "Yeah, you know, the one at the beginning of your birth date. So I don't have to calculate it because it's 2021. So if you were born before 2000, you're already, you know what I mean?" And I was like,
I hate that.
I was like, I don't even count anymore.
Whatever.
Right? Oh well, I'm gonna be old and cranky.
When I turned 21, I would get mad when people would ID me. I was like, isn't it obvious? And now I'm 25, and I'm like, please ID me.
Please ID me. Please make me feel young again. I totally get that, dude. That's insane.
Well,
today we have a spooky story. I do need to give a bit of a trigger warning before we start. This case, if you're familiar with Eileen Wuornos, the serial killer, this is what we're going to be talking about. There is a certain amount of sexual assault involved in this story. It isn't something that happens to the victims. The murder victims, it is in a different context, but we will still be as sensitive as possible when we're going over these things to make sure our viewers are comfortable. And yeah, so if you don't want to hear that, this may not be the story for you. Here we go. So first of all, before we get started, female serial killers have been somewhat of a modern thing that we have found out, mainly because a lot of cases that were dropped where there were female serial killers, they were dropped specifically because they were women. Something we talked about in the Jack the Ripper case is that any possibility of a female being involved is thrown out the window because they don't think they're smart enough to do that anyways. You know what I mean? So catching Eileen Wuornos took a lot than I think it would have taken a male perpetrator, because to the public eye and to the general public, women are still seen as caretakers, and it's really hard to imagine them in these sort of positions. But there are a ton of female serial killers and female murderers, and it's something that we have to watch our bias on a lot to make sure we don't overlook victims and things like that. So Eileen Wuornos, her birth name is Eileen Carol Pittman. She was born on February 29th in 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Some interesting facts about her family is that her mother was 14 and her father was 16 when they got married. It was an older time, but that's still pretty young, right? Like, even for the 50s, I think that's still pretty young. Eileen has an older brother named Keith, and right after Eileen was born, her mother divorced her father, and her father was in jail. So she's completely isolated from the father. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and later charged with pedophilic crimes and he committed suicide in prison in 1969. 9 years before that, in 1960, Eileen and her brother Keith were abandoned by their mother. So their father's in jail and dead. And then their mother just kind of left them. You know, if she was born in 56, she was only 4 years old when she was abandoned. She was given with their maternal grandparents, and this is where things start to get pretty upsetting. Eileen, both her and her brother were assaulted physically and sexually by their grandfather throughout their
Oh my
childhood.
God, that's a lot of generational trauma already.
Yeah, definitely. And they were living in poverty. So Eileen and Keith were essentially using their bodies to get food, to get cigarettes. She was addicted to cigarettes at a really young age, like 11 or 12. Um, when she was 14, she became pregnant and she placed the child up for adoption. She dropped out of school then. Obviously, it's hard enough now to be pregnant and go to school, but I can't imagine in the 60s, the late 60s and
Yeah.
70s, It's ridiculous. And just that this happened at all, like so many of these cases, people think serial killers are just like a coincidence and they're not like a result of their environment. Sometimes they are. Sometimes people are literally just born without the chemical processes in their brains to have empathy or remorse. But most of the time, man, it's the parents that mess them up. She dropped out of school when her grandmother died shortly after she put the baby up for adoption, and the grandfather threw her out, kicked her out of the house after she had the baby. Interestingly enough,
What? As if
like
he isn't the slime ball. Wow.
I know. That's what pisses me off. It's like you are the reason, and now you're just making it worse. you know. She became a prostitute at age 15 to survive, so she was doing that
Mm.
for a long time. Um, when she turned 18, around 1974, she was just committing petty crimes. Usually things that were violent. She had an assault problem, obviously an anger problem, and she was a little bit obsessed with guns. She really liked guns, and I think that as a sexual assault victim, it just brought her a sense of safety, I think,
Yeah,
to
and
have a
she
gun
felt
around.
like she had some power back
Yeah,
with the
definitely.
weapon.
And we're not like to make it clear to our listeners, like this is a woman who murdered other people, so we're not trying to like defend her actions, but we
No,
are going to
but
be honest about like society and what it does to people. That's I think that's another like um just area of our podcast is like sometimes you have to understand the things in society that create these scenarios where these people feel like there's nothing else that they can do, or
mhm.
they're tortured. Okay, so then soon petty crimes, they're not enough for her, and she wants to start doing bigger things, and she starts hitchhiking now, which is where our costumes are coming into play. People are like, why are you all hooded up? Why does Allison look so beautiful as a trucker? It's because um, when Eileen started participating in murder and things of higher crimes, she was posing as a hitchhiker in order to get their victims alone. Oh, I forgot. Eileen also randomly was a gold digger for a year in 1976. She went to Florida. She hitchhiked to Florida. That was the first time she hitchhiked. And she married an old yacht club president. Just married him on the spot. And a few weeks into them being married, apparently she like beat him like pretty hard. And he filed a restraining order against her and divorced her, but not before she filed a life insurance policy on him. And because he was so old, when he died, she got $10,000.
I wanted to be like, girl, get that bag. Hashtag girl boss, but then she
No,
like beat the shit out of him, like elder abuse. I'm like, never mind.
no,
Get the
that's
money
the thing.
back.
It's like, yeah, yeah. Honestly, she blew it on a fancy car and then immediately wrecked it. Yeah,
Oh.
no, I'm not kidding. I think her brother, her brother died, so she was like sad because her brother died, I think, and so that was like an impulse
Wait, how
buy.
did her brother die?
And I could never find that out. It just said later that year, her brother also died. I can't remember if there was a specific.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. It's like this woman is surrounded by death. Um, in 1981, she was arrested in Florida, where she also hitchhiked to, for armed robbery. She was in prison again, guns and violence. That was just that became her thing. After she started doing more serious crimes, she falls in love with a woman named
Ooh.
Tyria Moore in 1986. She was a hotel maid at Daytona Beach lesbian bar. Yeah, apparently it was love at first sight, according to both of them. Um,
Wow.
right?
I'm so
A
sad
true
she's a
American love story.
murderer, abuser, because I love the gays,
I know.
Gotta stick
I know.
together, but
True.
not in
Not when you
this
kill
instance.
people.
No.
She was Eileen was the main breadwinner of the relationship with the prostitution. And her and Tyria were always getting arrested for various bar fights. She was also a pretty violent person as well.
So they
So
would
now
just
we'll
like
start.
tag team it.
Yeah, basically, it was kind of like a Mario and Luigi situation in the bar fights.
I'm just imagining like me and Riley doing that. That's hilarious. It's not
Right? It's
hilarious.
like,
It's fucked up. I don't know. I'm sorry.
no, that's funny. Just walking into a bar with your boyfriend or girlfriend or partner and just being like, "All right, what's up, everybody?" Yeah, I know, like Fight Club. You're like, "All right, Riley, I gotta tap out," and you know what I mean? Like, that would be wild.
Jesus.
I could not imagine.
The whole circus. She's not a clown. She's the whole circus.
She's the whole circus. Yeah. So we're gonna start talking about her victims now. Her main method of killing them, that she varies very slightly with all of them, is shooting at point blank range. Going back to she feels really comfortable and safe with guns, it was pretty easy to understand why that would be her main method of killing them. She claims that in each one of these cases, she went after men who had sexually assaulted her and were trying to do that while soliciting services. So her main defense was that in each of these cases, she was offering prostitution services, and many people have the misconception that just because they're a prostitute, you can't sexually assault them. If you do anything that's against another person's consent, even if they're a sex worker, it's assault. You know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think like, oh well, you're a hooker, you should like it. Like you're still a person with respect and boundaries, and
Mm.
so these clients of hers, her defense when she was caught is that they were trying to sexually assault her while getting services, and that's why she did it. It's not exactly the case, but there is some truth to that, especially with the first victim. Just to give because I know sometimes when we talk about serial killers, we talk about their activity period, and sometimes how many people they have killed over a certain amount of time can reveal about their mindset. These she killed 7 men over the course of 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Busy.
I know how we talked about like the Jack the Ripper murders. Those 5 were all over a couple of months, but that's kind of like a localized area. For somebody like Eileen, who is sort of a nomad and traveling around, that's a lot to not be caught by, but it's aided by that travel. Like we were talking about before, not being able to connect cases over state lines or country lines or things like that is really one of the big, like, prohibiting things with some of these cases. So, Richard Charles Mallory, he was 51. He was an electronics store owner in Clearwater. He was actually a convicted rapist, and she claimed self-defense against him. So this is the one that I think was the straw that broke the camel's back in the way, because she did get assaulted by this man, and this kind of spurs the rest of the attacks. On December 13th, his body was found a couple of miles away in a heavily wooded area. He had been shot several times, point blank range, and 2 bullets that went into his lung were to be the cause of death. So, like, getting shot is painful enough. Like, getting shot, like, in the lungs, like affecting your breathing, you know?
Jesus.
I mean, it's a convicted rapist, so I'm not going to, feel sorry for him. But
No,
I do
I'm
think,
actually. It's just hard because it's like I
yeah,
don't know how the rest of this is gonna develop, but I want to be like, you
yeah,
know,
yeah. No, I definitely understand. That's why I think this case is so interesting. And when she gets caught and she starts talking in her confession, that's when it starts to get really, really interesting. And we'll explore that sort of like duology of, am I cheering for a murderer? Question mark. you know. The next victim, David Andrew Spears. He was 47. He was a construction worker in Winter Garden. He was declared missing on May 19th in 1990, and on June 1st, his body was found along US Route 19 in Florida, in Citrus County. He had been shot 6 times with a .22 caliber pistol. Again, point blank range. Charles Edmund, I'm not going to get this last name right, Karskadadon. Yeah, this last name is weird. He was 40. He is a part-time rodeo worker. And on June 6th, so just 5 days after her previous victim, his body was found in Pasco County. He was shot 9 times with a .20 caliber weapon, which is interesting that she's changing guns. So she's not,
Ew.
she's not stupid. Like, just because she had like a hard background and probably an uneducated family, she was pretty smart about this. Like, living on the streets as she did, she learned a lot of stuff. And I think that sort of culture helped these crimes go unnoticed. You know what I mean? When people learn, specific stuff that they have to do to survive, basically. Um, this was different in that this body was wrapped in an electric blanket. Before
Oh.
she was just dumping the body. Yeah. Um, it was decomposing really, really bad when it was found. Like, almost like the electric blanket had been like turned on to heat up the dead body, which is just nasty.
Ah. Oh my
Like, that's,
God.
yeah, it's just nasty. Um
It was cooking.
yeah, literally. That's the thing. Is like that's why he was decomposing so fast is because of the heat. And also being in a car, the heat, gets bigger.
Yeah.
Um she had actually stolen his car and pawned a gun that belonged to him. This is start to be where she starts making mistakes. So as we talked before, when killers devolve, that's why it was so shocking that Jack the Ripper, whoever it was, never got caught, because they'll start to make mistakes like this. Taking his car, having witnesses see somebody else that's not him driving his car, caused a lot of suspicion, and pawning items of a recently deceased person is also incredibly suspicious if you're not like their family members.
Yeah.
Um, the next victim, Peter Abram Seams, he's 65. He was a retired merchant seaman, a seaman, um, on July 4th, 1990. So if we think about the timeline as May, and then there's June 1st, June 6th, and now July 4th. His car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. This is one where her partner participated. Not in the killing, per se, but in getaway and every other part of the crime. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car, and her Eileen's palm print.
She was a furry.
She's a Blue's Clues. She just boop. Her handprint, her palm was found on the interior door handle. So another thing that she made a mistake about. This dude's body was never found, and that's kind of worrisome to me because
He did not have a happy 4th of July.
he did not. He absolutely did not. Independence? No. In the dead, in the ground.
Stop.
um, but on that day, witnesses saw them abandon his car. They saw they gave the police descriptions of them, and that's when a media campaign started. So this would have been before we were born, but if people remember seeing her on the news, this is when it started. Is after they found that car. Again, police found more of their belongings in pawn shops, and it's a sign of desperation. I think on Eileen's side, prostitution was her only source of income, and Tyria was just a bartender. They don't make a lot of money. But now that her handprint had been found, her fingerprints are on file, so it's getting a lot harder for her to hide, basically.
Hmm.
July 31st is her next victim. Troy Eugene Burris is 50 years old. This is so bad, but he's a literal sausage salesman, and I can't say that without
Stop.
laughing. I can't. Like
Sausage.
R.I.P. But he just sells sausage. Like this dude was just selling hot dogs, selling brats. You know what I mean? Like, uh. Anyway, hey, on July 31st, he was reported missing. And on August 4th, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. Now there was a little bit of a hiatus, just for a month, but the next victim was killed on September 11th, 1990. Charles Richard Humphries, age 46. He was a retired U.S. Air Force major. He was a former state child abuse investigator and a former chief of police. On September 12th, 1990, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed and had been shot 6 times in the head and torso. His car was later found in Suwannee County. Yeah, this one is interesting to me.
So at this point, she's just murdering these dudes to get their car?
It's to get money. That's the thing is whenever I would watch documentaries on Eileen Wuornos, she got attacked the first time and she killed him. And I think that she, like you were saying before, for the first time in her life, got some power back. And it
Yeah.
just instantly went to the head. Somebody who has been abused their whole life, abandoned, neglected, possibly influences of schizophrenia or other mental illnesses which come into play later. You know, like you think about it and it's really sad, but what other option was there for somebody like this, you know? Um and this one is confusing because I can only think that she either perceived him as not being sincere in his effort to stop child sexual abuse, and that's why she went after him. Because you would think, as a survivor herself, she wouldn't want to hurt the investigators who are like investigating things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, it didn't really make sense to me. So the only thing I can think of is that she felt like he wasn't doing enough, or she had heard of things that maybe she thought he should have handled better, or something. You know. And the last victim on November 19th, 1990. Its name is Walter Antonio. He's 62, a trucker, security guard, and a police reservist. This is interesting because his body was almost completely naked. So she hadn't shamed the bodies before. You know what I mean? She dumped him. I mean, in that case, you're kind of like, F you, I'm just throwing your body out afterwards. But she didn't take off their clothing or anything, which you find in a lot of males that are killing females. You will see that they'll take their clothes off as a sign of
Hmm.
like, haha, you look silly, you're exposed and everything. It's more demeaning.
Yeah.
Um, he had been shot 4 times, and his car was found 5 days later. On January 9th, 1991, she finally gets arrested on an outstanding warrant um, at a biker bar in Florida. Uh, yeah, I know. You just like it had to be there.
Yeah.
They found her partner, they found Tyria the next day in Pennsylvania. 3 days later, she confessed to all of the murders, and her defense was that in each and every case they had tried to sexually assault her, so she defended herself. Um, After her sentencing, she was mentally evaluated and deemed mentally unstable and had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and had schizophrenic tendencies. 4 days after that, she was sentenced to death. She is one of the few females that have been killed with capital punishment, actually.
Shit.
Um, yeah, and that's something about the justice system is that it does sometimes, depending on the race and nationality of the female, They will give them lighter sentences in some cases, and this was one that I think was important to establish that no matter your gender identity or biology, murder is murder, you
Yeah.
know? Like if this was flipped and it was a man going after older women, I don't think they would hesitate to put them on death row. But also, this was back in the 90s when it was more acceptable. There's a lot of pushback now to get rid of capital punishment, um, which is an interesting discussion to have in and of itself because, for the most part, I don't really think that it's beneficial. But then you have horror stories like this, and it's hard to really decide.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat to where it's like, I don't know. Personally, it's like for me, it's like I want all like pedos and like rapists
Yeah.
and like I don't know. I don't care. Like I
What
want you
happens to
just
him?
locked up. I can't care.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think it's valid.
Like
Yeah, definitely.
it just sucks though. Like I wonder if rehabilitation was more common here in the US, if people would change, but the thing is that these like predators keep being released over and over again back into society and they keep doing the same horrid things and getting like slaps on the wrist
Yeah,
and
I agree with you.
ugh,
I think that's the because
it just sickens me.
I think that's a main part of the problem is that when they're put away, they're not receiving any help whatsoever. Because people have a misunderstanding that people commit crimes because they want to, or people hurt other people because they have consciously thought it through and made this decision. Like, human behavior is so wide a spectrum. It's just putting people in a box like that is not going to help them. And I've seen a lot of articles of therapists specifically being therapists of pedophiles, and listening to them because acknowledging what they've done is horrific, and that's something that they're not there to condemn them. They're already in jail. You know what I mean? But it's to really assess what is making them make these decisions. And a lot of the time, they've been abused themselves. They're perpetuating, like you were saying, generational abuse earlier with Eileen's grandpa. That's not an excuse or anything, but it's an example of if you start to try to instill programs to just meet somebody where they are and like we would just understand things better, even if it didn't lighten their sentences, even if it didn't do anything like that, like just for understanding behavior's sake, like just getting them to explain, because I think that would be part of the problem is it's just understanding and then trying to educate people on that. Like, if you see these behaviors, this is probably what it's going to lead to. You need to address it when it happens, and not when they're
Yeah.
already an adult hurting people. Anyway, after all of that, she was mentally evaluated. She got her first death sentence on March 31st, 1992. Because it takes a while. She gets sentenced to death in 1991, and it's a while before that happens, which is really common. So many people just sit there on death row, and they're not actually put to death because it's expensive to kill people. It's being routinely proven over and over again. I believe, if I've read it correctly, that it's more expensive. Capital punishment is more expensive than taking care of them for the rest of their life, because people are like, oh, you think about the meals and everything. And it's like the drugs that it takes to do lethal injection,
Yeah.
the time for the facility, the disposal app, like it's not cheaper to
I
just kill
never
somebody.
thought about that. Wow.
Well, because people are like, we can't get rid of capital punishment. It's so nice. It's cheap. I was like, really?
It's
Because I've
nice.
never been able. You know
So
what I mean?
swell.
They're just like, kill people. But yeah, a cost was definitely something that is a big part of the argument, because it's like it's not even cheaper. So why are we defending doing it? Um, anyway, she pleaded no contest to the charges, saying she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she, whenever she talks, this case sticks out to me because she speaks with such raw emotion. There's an actual interview. There's an interview, but there's a video of her interview on YouTube, her death row interview, where you can. I'm
Oh
going to read to you.
wow.
Read to you some of the things she says. I'll link it in the description if people are interested in this
Yeah.
case, because watching her talk it's so haunting because you hear the pain of like failed society things in everything that she says. In her statement to the court, she said, I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently assault me, as I've told you, but the others did not. They only began to start to. And so that's interesting because I'm like, well, did all these men try to do something that they didn't have permission to do? Or was she just triggered? You know, I'm sure she has PTSD about being assaulted. I wonder
Yeah.
if it was more of like they started to do things that reminded her of that attack, and so she just react. You know, you can't judge somebody's state of mind if they're trauma based. You know.
And I wish she had gotten help before all that. That's so sad.
That's what I mean. It's like this case. It's hard to swallow because it makes everybody think about all the things they want to ignore all the time. You know, like all the societal infrastructure that goes into play with this story. Um, on May 15th, she was given 3 more death sentences. So she was sentenced separately for each murder. Each time she gets a
Yeah.
death sentence. In 1992, she received her 5th one. Oh, she didn't get one for the murder of Siems because his body was never found. So they
Yeah.
can't confirm that he died. So she received 6 death sentences, 6 of the 7. Whenever she was confessing, it was really hard to follow her. She kept telling different stories. Um, During an interview with, oh, okay, this is where things get interesting. So, in 2003, a movie was made about Eileen Wuornos. She was killed in 2002 by lethal injection. But in 2003, a movie was made about her story. It's called Monster, and it has Charlize Theron as Eileen Wuornos. I haven't seen it. I've heard it's a great movie. I don't know how accurate it is to her story, but if you guys have watched it, you can talk about it in the comments how it's similar to the actual facts or not. If it's a good movie, I love Charlize Theron, so I'll probably enjoy the movie. But she was pissed off about having her story be made into a movie. Um, she said in an interview with the filmmaker when the cameras were off that she said everything was in self defense, but she could not stand being on death row. She had been there for 10 years and she just wanted to die. Right? I don't know how true
Well,
that is because, again, she's been changing everything, but.
well, that must be so weird to like be waiting to die and then everyone's like glamorizing and
Mm hmm.
you know what I mean? Like profiting
Yeah.
off of her pain,
That's exactly
basically.
what she says. Yeah. She's like, F you guys, I suffered through all this, and I'm not saying I'm innocent, but this is movie material. Like, I'm literally on death row. Like, you could have at least waited for me to die. You know? So, in the weeks before her execution, she gave a series of interviews. These are the ones I'm talking about that are on YouTube. Um, she talked about various things, and this is where the schizophrenic side of her starts being kind of visually apparent if you have been around other people with schizophrenia or if you are familiar with that condition. She was going through multiple different things. She said that she was being taken away to meet God and Jesus and the angels and whatever is beyond the beyond. In her final interview, she said that her mind was tortured, her head crushed by sonic pressure. Um, she would claim that she would get food poisonings on purpose in jail and that guards would beat her. And that every time she complained, they just would gaslight her into being insane. And at a certain point in the interview, she turns on the interviewer and starts screaming at him. And I'm going to just say this word for word, so I'm not going to censor it in anything. But she screamed at him and she said, you sabotaged my ass. Society and the cops and the system. A raped woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass. And then she cut the interview.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, man. You're just like,
It's weird because she sounds like my mom with the way she's
interesting.
talking right there. I know that's probably like
Yeah.
TMI. You can cut this out, but
No. No.
it's just
Up
my
to you if you
mom.
want it in.
I don't really care, but like my mom has struggled with meth use and been through a
Hmm.
lot of abuse in her life. And just like the way that was phrased made me think of something my mom would say.
I get you.
But
I can see that.
schizophrenia is rough. Like I have friends who struggle. I can't imagine.
Yeah, that's where like the random religious talking and things like that. I think it's through her grandfather, who also was the one who was probably schizophrenic as well, where she gets it from genetically.
Mm.
Um, yeah, no, definitely a lot of people that I've even known from like high school and stuff. This sounds like a lot of them who just ended up turning to drugs and just saying like, "Well, what was I supposed to do? Everything else at every turn failed me. What else could I have been?" You know? Her execution took place on October 9th, 2002. She declined her last meal. She would have been able to get anything under $20, but she opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words are crazy as well. That is just wild to me. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back. I'll be back." Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. She died at 9:47 a.m. She was the 10th woman in the United States and the second in Florida to be executed since the United States brought capital punishment back in 1976. That's her story. It's a more of a sad one, but I think these stories are important to understand that serial killers are not just some fanatical character that you see on TV. They are human beings that, through unfortunate life circumstances, sometimes come to the darkest parts of our psyche and really show us what we're capable of. So sorry
Well,
to be a
thank you so
bummer.
much. No, I mean, it just makes me think like I hate to say this, but it's like it just always boggles me because I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, and it's just
Hmm.
like I can't even relate to going to the route that these people went to
Yeah.
with theirs. So it's just like the disconnect, I guess, is just like astounding to me.
Well, people respond to trauma in different ways. You know what I mean? It's a lot of independent responses that, like survival, fight or flight or freeze. That's not something that always can be taught. That's just within you. Even a confrontational person, I consider myself a pretty direct and confrontational person, and there's still things that make me freeze depending on what it is. And some people can't deal with what they've endured in the way where they don't hurt other people. And usually you see the signs of that with her petty crimes and stuff. And that's when, if she had a family or somebody to step in, that's when they would have done it. Been like, you can't just keep stealing stuff. We got to get you focused on something else, you know?
Yeah.
Because I can relate to that too. It's like, I've been through some stuff and I haven't killed anybody yet. So it's, yet, so it's like, you think about that and you're just like, dang, am I crazy? I don't kill people, so I don't think I'm crazy, but I relate to these mindsets. It's hard sometimes when you see yourself in a horrific story like this, even to a small extent.
So true, bestie. Um,
So true, bestie.
thank thank you thank you for your story. I
Yeah, I'm glad that we
think
were able to talk about it.
I gotta go think about it.
You gotta go thank in your truck.
Yeah.
Huh, that was really insightful. And just driving. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening in. We'll be releasing some more stuff soon, getting back on track. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions or comments, let us know.
Yeah.
Bye.